you're good.
Okay, I only have 4 audience members here today because the weather's bad, so I couldn't get a 5th person, so I apologize. Okay, the death penalty is a highly controversial subject in which there are many mixed opinions about. Some individuals view the death penalty should be illegal, while others believe criminals deserve a punishment to the extent of death. There are many reasons behind the mixed opinions people have on the topic. I myself do not support the death penalty and believe it should be abolished, as it's a waste of taxpayers' money, it violates the Constitution, life in prison is a more effective sentence, and it's not right for the government to get away with murder. First, let's take a look at how the death penalty is a waste of taxpayers' money. No matter which way you look at it, taxpayers will be paying for the inmates whether they are incarcerated for the rest of their lives or sentenced to death. Although the cost of housing an inmate for life is expensive, the cost of the death penalty is 2 to 5 times more expensive. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, in California, it is calculated that if the governor were to change the sentences of those remaining on death row to life without parole, the state would save $170 million per year. Over a span of 20 years, California would save $5 billion. That's a lot of money. The additional appeals and legal proceedings contribute largely to the high cost of an execution. Taxpayers have to pay for the time of judges, prosecutors, public defenders, and court reporters. The cost and time spent on death penalty cases is outrageous. Instead of supporting the death penalty, I believe it would be smarter for our government to give funds where it is needed and not to spend it on something which could be eliminated. Why should we, as taxpayers, have to pay all the extra money when they should sit in prison for life anyways, which would be a better punishment? There are many different things our tax money could be spent on, but instead it goes for such things which are not needed in our society. Why not abolish the death penalty so our money can go to things which are worthwhile, such as education for our young children? Next, I'll discuss how the death penalty violates the Constitution. The U.S. Constitution website states, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. These words make up the 8th Amendment of the United States Constitution. There are many people who view the death penalty as a cruel and unusual punishment and believe it should be a complete violation of the Constitution for someone to be executed. Not only do I believe the death penalty is cruel and unusual, but to add to my argument, it is not guaranteed the procedure will be executed properly every time. I found the following story on TheGuardian.com. In 2007, the execution by lethal injection of Angel Nieves Diaz caught media attention when it took 34 minutes for him to finally die from the time the IV tubes were inserted into his arms and they began pumping the chemicals into his body. The procedure is to take a matter of minutes to complete, but in Diaz's case, it went horribly wrong. The medical examiner reported the finding of 12-inch chemical burns on the inside of Diaz's arms. The fact of the needle not inserted properly in his arms led to a painful, lingering death. Does this make you cringe? This says nothing less than a cruel and unusual punishment, which is a clear violation of the Constitution. I understand many people believe they deserve to die for the crimes they have committed, but no 2 murders are going to make it right. Murdering is wrong no matter what the circumstances are. There are so many procedures which have gone completely wrong, and unless the procedure is going to go as it should every time, the death penalty should be abolished. Moving on to why life in prison is a more effective sentence, I believe those who are given the death sentence should instead be sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Instead of executing them, which is what many inmates want, I believe they should have to live a long and lonely life in itself for the rest of their lives, knowing they will never be a free man or woman again. Does letting the convicted receive life imprisonment mean they are being let off easy? According to the NBC News, the answer is no. NBC News also mentioned a man by the name of Gordon Steidel, who once lived on death row until his sentence was changed to life in prison. If you really want to kill someone, give them life without parole. It's worse than dying, Steidel stated. Being incarcerated for a long period of time can really affect a prisoner to the extent of wanting to die rather than having to live the life they do. They should instead have to sit in prison and suffer for years instead of having the suffering end in an instant. Do you think they'd rather suffer the humiliation of lifelong prison or be martyred by a death sentence? Life without parole looks to be the more effective punishment. I think people should be sentenced to life in prison instead of death because they should have to think about what they did every single day of their life. It may be a relief for them to be able to end their misery by being put to death. They don't deserve such a blessing. So, have you ever wondered why it is okay for the government to get away with murder but nobody else can? What bothers me the most is the fact that the state is able to murder. It is against the law for any person to kill another human being. Anybody who does so ends up in prison for a long time and in some cases gets sentenced to death. My question is, what makes it right for the government to kill human beings, but yet it is illegal for anyone else in this world to do so? This doesn't even make sense to me, and it doesn't at all seem legal. Nobody should be able to kill another human being without having any harsh consequences attached to it. No matter what your status in society is, it is wrong and it is not at all fair to kill another human being. There are many solid reasons as to why the death penalty should be abolished, and the ones I just went over are just a few. Needless to say, I am not a supporter of the death penalty. I do not believe it is effective, and I don't believe it is right. I brought up some very valid points, including how it is a waste of taxpayers' money, why it violates the Constitution, the fact that life in prison would be a more effective sentence, and finally, how it is not right for the government to murder. I know where I stand on the topic, and I have a very good reason as to why I feel the way I do about it. The death penalty is wrong, and it's only a matter of time before more people take my side and take a stand. The death penalty should be eliminated because life without the possibility of parole is ultimately the worst punishment. Right here, I just have a map of the United States and which states have the death penalty and which states do not. All of the darkened states are, they allow the death penalty, and you can just see a couple of the states, including Minnesota, who don't. I just have a picture of money just to show how much the death penalty costs. And right here it just says the death penalty, it makes killers of all of us. And then just a picture of an execution chair and like to vote yes or no. So sit back and think, whose side will you take? That's it. Oh, sorry, wrong.